Welcome to the Real Estate for the Culture podcast, where we investigate trends and educate listeners on all things urban real estate in Chicago and nationwide. Let's get started. To the Transforming Urban podcast. We are here at WNUR Studios, and we are so looking forward to talking about real estate for the culture. This is a podcast and webcast and radio show that discusses what is happening in urban America. We are micro sort of here in Chicago, and we'll talk about all the fantastic things that are happening in our communities because there are so many great things happening that people don't know about. But today we're going to talk about sort of the transformation of Chicago neighborhoods. I have two wonderful guests who've seen collectively over 100 years of things that have happened in Chicago. Our corridors changing, transforming, improving, declining. They have seen all of that. And I think if you're going to talk about what's happening in Chicago right now and present, you have to understand the past. You have to understand what's happened here. Right now in the WNUR studios, I have a real estate pioneer, the former head of the Chicago Association of Realtors, the former head of the Chicago NAACP, Mr. Frank Williams. Yay, Frank! Frank has seen it all in this town. He's been a part of the transformation. He has been front line in the transformation. He's going to tell us about that. And then we're going to talk to another Chicago pioneer, history maker, professor emeritus at Northeastern Illinois University, the Carruthers School of Inner City Studies, or is it Urban Studies now? Who knows? Urban Studies now, which is right in line with exactly what we're talking about today. Dr. Robert Starks. Yay. So we start from the beginning. We begin with history. Everything I do begins with history. So we're going to start quickly, talk a little bit about their entrance into the city of Chicago, where they could live and where they could shop, where they could, sort of do business. So Frank, we're going to start with you. Since you are the man of the hour, we've got some great projects that we're working on about Frank's life and history. So we're going to begin with Mr. Frank Williams. When did you get to town?
Let me first start it off, if you don't mind. The 4 cycles to a neighborhood, and the first cycle is
get your pens out and get ready. You're gonna learn some stuff today.
It's when it's first developed. Right. There's a plan. A group of folks come together and make a plan for a village, town, a city. And that development goes until it is either 90% developed or whatever, and it stabilizes, which means a community has all of the ingredients that make it desirable, such as schools, medical centers, transportation, and all the other things that one look for within an area of community where they want to live. And that second cycle, the stabilization cycle, remains there as long as the politics, the financing, the powers to be, and others maintain it at that level. And then, of course, there becomes a third cycle, which is the decline cycle. And that to me is like if you, in your sink, after you get through washing your dishes and you pull out the stopper, the water runs out. And that's what happens in a decline cycle, is there's a planned process. The funds are going someplace else. And so therefore, that area declines. And we'll start talking about legalized separation, legalized segregation, etc., as we move forward. Well, that is where, for folks that look like us, we have been over the last well over 100 years buying within the decline cycle. decline cycle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was at its lowest level.
Okay.
And persons were coming in and buying those properties dirt cheap from us. Dirt cheap from us. And of course, today, as you see, as you call it, Brownsville today, it's been redeveloped and they're selling single families at $500,000 property. Commercial strips are being, you understand, and major companies are moving into the community because it is not in its rehab redevelopment cycle. That's, you understand, cycle number 4.
All right. And so you came to Chicago. You ended up on 47th and Lake Park. Um, and I've got great stories of my dad where he ended up as well. And so you felt comfortable moving there. Where'd you shop? Where'd you go shopping? Where could you go and buy things and take care of yourself that way?
Well, first, let me say this right away. We didn't, because we'd already had 2 youngsters. We had to find a place, an apartment, because in the Belvedere Hotel there's a little small kitchenette, and we rented a apartment 5208 South Woodlawn on the 3rd floor, which was the 4th floor, because the first level, as you know, in those buildings there was no apartments,
Right.
you know, and so the 4th level. Well, we also recognized that we had to start raising some money, because if we're going to raise the kids properly, they need a yard, a place to live. And Joanne started to say we've got to save our ducats and find some kind of little place to move to. So we were there from 62, and I'd gotten a job at the U.S. Postal Service, and Joanne was doing clerical kind of work. Save our little ducats and found a place at 8240 South Emerald Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, in August of 1965, we moved in there. Well, at that time, it was about 75% Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
But by the next year, it was probably cut in half, and the common term then was white flight.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so services start to naturally decline as they moved out of the neighborhood. You understand? And of course, naturally, as we stayed there from 65 to 1974, we then moved to Beverly, 9428 South Damon Avenue. And we moved there because it was an area that the schools were solid. We learned a little something about real estate those years. You know, you learn when you're involved and you're doing things. Tragically, for so many of us, we find ourselves not carrying it over with our children and our friends and our family and all of that to start understanding better. It's not just buying a pretty house, it is buying a community.
Right.
It's buying a neighborhood with shopping and school system and health facilities, which is what balances off the stability of a community.
Which means that we should start thinking about community land trusts. We have not talked about that enough, and we haven't even developed it enough, especially
Community
in the
land
city of
trusts.
Chicago.
What do you mean by that? Are you saying whole communities coming together, pooling money together to
Buying
purchase
land,
things?
doing exactly what he said, with the three steps, and maintaining it, not allowing it to decline. Having a place to shop, having health centers, having good schools, controlled with cooperative housing as well as private housing in that area, because many poor people, not poor, but less than middle class people, and even some middle class people, cannot afford to buy private housing, but they can have cooperative housing. Why don't we have enough cooperative housing in black communities in Chicago, Mr. Real Estate Man?
I don't know.
But do you understand what I mean by
well
community
I
land trust?
Well, you know, co-ops is not real estate ownership. You're buying stock
Exactly.
in a situation. I'm a believer that certainly fee simple ownership is the way to go. I do. I believe that.
Okay.
You know.
But there are some instances, again,
Well,
right now, the group that I work a lot with are creating sort of a consortium
mm-hmm,
of individuals to buy retail in urban corridors. So
mm-hmm,
people can contribute as much as $1,000 or as much as $250,000 to buy retail. That can happen in
Shares.
different ways
Mm-hmm.
as well, with any other type of real estate property. You can do that. You need all of the correct financial infrastructure and legal infrastructure to do something like that. And then you do have to expect that if it gives people a sense of ownership. Like, I'm not going to break into that strip mall because I gave someone $1,000 to buy it. I have some interest in that
Our ownership
property,
interest.
and they feel connected to it. So I'm going to go
mm-hmm,
to that retailer that's in there. I'm going to take care of I'm going to pick up the garbage if I go by,
mm-hmm,
make sure the brothers are not, sort of lingering around. But there's a risk to some of those things. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
It's like it's risky because when do you exit the financial obligation? That kind of thing. Will
mm-hmm.
you make money? Will that continue to value be sort of increase in value, etc. So there's always risk with any kind of real estate sort of deal. But I just want to set the core sort of what happened when you arrived 50 years ago or whenever to this town. Where did you decide to live? And then where did you decide to shop? Where did you live? Where did you shop? And why did you make those decisions?
Well,
So,
let me
Mr.
just,
Dr. Starks.
I'll tell you that, but I lived in years ago in Woodlawn. Not really Woodlawn. It was 61st and Stony Island in the WCDC cooperative.
Okay.
Okay, and that was one of the few cooperatives in on the south side of the city of Chicago. Okay, and it was fairly good. It's still operating, but it's no longer owned by WCDC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but okay, so uh, I lived on
Dr.
in
Starks. If I can't see you there,
in
then
Lawndale,
try to come closer so we
in
can see you.
North
Go ahead.
Lawndale,
You're good.
and around 12th Street. So we shopped up and down 12th Street, and it was primarily a Jewish community, but Jewish white flight was moving fast out of the community, except for the commercial things. They owned the
Not letting
stores,
go of that,
but
right?
they moved out of the neighborhood.
Right.
And so when I was a teenager, worked for some grocery stores, and the man who owned it lived in the suburbs, but he had the store on 12th Street.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, of course. Okay, so what year was that again? You came to Chicago. Why did you come to Chicago?
Well, my parents were already here, and I
Okay.
just went to school in the South with my grandmother. That was in uh, basically 60, 61. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you came to Chicago because your parents were here in 1960,
Mm-hmm.
1961.
Mm-hmm.
School, was it a school related thing? Did you go to school at a particular place?
I had graduated from high school and I went straight to Loyola
Okay, what high school did you graduate from?
in Mississippi.
In Mississippi. Okay,
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
came here, went to Loyola.
right.
And so you went to Loyola, which is on the north side of Chicago, but you lived in.
Downtown. I went to the
So you went
downtown
downtown campus, but you lived in North Lawndale.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And uh, in North Lawndale at that time, was it still a Jewish community, or were you saying they were white flighting out, or was it?
It was a flight.
Okay,
Real flight.
so they were gone, but they owned the
In the
commercial
60s.
properties, right?
In the 60s.
In the
In the
60s.
60s.
And so you said you shopped on 12th Street. I hear a
Right.
lot about that. 12th and what? Give me the coordinates between 12th and between what's the street and what street?
Central Park.
So Central Park, so
Mm-hmm.
Roosevelt and like Central Park
Right.
area
That area.
was a
right.
flourishing area. You
It was
could go
very
grocery
flourishing.
shopping. You
Oh,
could do all the
everything.
different things there.
They owned everything up and down the strip. I guess you may have had one or two black stores up and down that area.
Mm.
But the great majority of them were white owned. You
Interesting.
know, they made money off of black people.
And it continues to happen.
Yeah.
We're continuing to
Mm-hmm.
go to retail strip centers
Mm-hmm.
in neighborhoods primarily driven by us, and we are not owning sort of the retail. So we're going to talk about that and see how that might be changing a little bit. And so, Dr.
Hopefully,
Starks,
change.
you talked a little. You came to me with this idea that about the maintenance of Chicago segregation.
Mm-hmm.
What brought that to your attention? What brought that to sort of top of mind to discuss?
Well, the fact that in studying the history of Chicago, it's always been painted as one of the most segregated big cities in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at what Dr. King went through in 1966 and his fight to desegregate Chicago, and the fact that we have been working in demonstrations because I worked for the Urban League in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
and Frank was with the NAACP. All of those two groups were fighting segregation. The NAACP more than the Urban League, but at the same time, we had a great deal of resistance. And of course, as you know, with Dr. King coming to Chicago and fighting it, he had a huge fight with Mayor Daley because Mayor Daley he lived on the issue of segregation. But here's the thing that most people don't realize. The corridors for the expressways sanctified. I mean, it actually instilled segregation because the Eisenhower went straight through a black community on the west side, and on the south side, the Dan Ryan went straight through the black community there. And of course, on the west side of the expressway, on the south side, was the uh, the housing projects, which also maintained segregation and guaranteed a daily win
Robert
in every
Taylor and
election.
Stateway
Robert Taylor
Gardens.
Stateway Gardens, right.
How to be well.
From 22nd Street all the way to 51st Street.
55th, Garfield.
Yeah, and that's I love how people have to realize that policy is so important in
It's
keeping
absolutely
communities
important.
segregated in the United States. I
Right.
mean, it's set up with
Mhm.
fantastic studies by great universities
Mhm.
that says, you know what, let's keep these people over here. This is how we do it. And you know what, if we're going to create these fantastic interstates, let's just cut right through this community and do this. So many things make it so important. So many things come together to really reinforce segregation.
Mhm.
And so, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So, we see a lot of communities now that I believe that we know that Frank Williams was instrumental in changing, in
Mhm.
attempting to change.
Mhm.
Frank, talk to us about your move to Beverly and what was happening in Beverly. Like how many, what was the demographic nature of Beverly, and what were the sort of positives and negatives about thinking about living there at the time that you decided to you wanted to live there.
Well, not just we talked about stability of a community, schools, shopping, all of the ingredients necessary, and the maintenance of the property. Values are appreciating. I mean, properties are appreciating in value because of the maintenance. Two communities, as both of you very well know, Beverly and certainly Oak Park.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they both came up with a co-conspiracy theory, integration maintenance.
Integration maintenance. I just want to.
Integration management.
We want to
I'm going to
manage
manage
integrate.
it.
Okay, yeah.
You understand?
So,
I'm going to.
so
You understand?
the municipal leaders wanted to maintain integration.
Well, they recognized that either it was going to be white flight, mass exodus, or we're going to do what is necessary to maintain the value, the level of community, and not lose economically.
Right, right. Now, was this a part of what was that group called that pushed integration that came up in the '60s.
Came out of what group?
It was a group of
Leadership Council
leadership council
for the Metropolitan Urban
right,
Community.
right.
No, the Leadership Council, it came out of Dr. King and Al Raby and all of those who were in the midst of the fair housing fights here in the city of Chicago. And of course, its intent and its purpose was to help us to move forward economically, equitably, you understand, and to be able to buy properties. Of course, many of us recognize that when we talked about integration, we should have been talking about the whole economic process rather than living next to Caucasians, you understand, but the whole economic process. And again, Lauren, you specialize in the commercial area. And if I'm a little older than you, if I'd been given the opportunity, I would have been specializing in commercial.
Right.
You understand? Because in my mind, the economics, yes, and folks are buying and leasing based on numbers. And if it fit, we do it. You understand? But for us, still, we are not. And you just spoke about co-op, and I wouldn't visualize the co-op in the same thought process that you were.
Different definition
But
of co-op.
yeah, But as we think about things, you understand that there is that a component back to what we were talking about in the redevelopment cycle. There are folks, entities that are able to borrow not millions but billions of dollars to buy a number of properties, commercial,
exactly.
commercial as well as residential, you understand, and do all those kinds of things. We somehow have not placed ourselves in a position because our small institutions like Seaway and Independence and others that we had, we not supporting them, they're no longer in existence.
They're no longer in existence. Right.
And the only way I'm in business today was because of a Seaway Bank. Because of a Seaway Bank.
The banks downtown would never have lent you the kind of money that you needed.
You understand? Period.
Exactly.
And of course, as we just talk about the banking institutions in the 60s and the 70s, really the banking institution only came out of that pressure, what is it, the CR, whatever it was, that they had to provide certain funds in certain communities. But mortgage companies, FHA and VA, and that's where the pressure came from, in order for us to buy residential property, because we could not utilize that for commercial things.
Right.
And of course, in commercial, if you can't get it something with 3 or 4% down payment, then you got to come up with 20%.
You don't have 25% somewhere, you're in trouble, right? And even if you have it, you're still in trouble because they're still going to find other ways to say we're not sure yet you're capable.
I must say this. I blame us today. I blame us for not working together. You just started the co-op thing, putting the dollars together. As I've looked,
there you go.
Putting the dollars together.
Right.
I just saw it in real estate, but it's the conglomerate of the whole process.
Well, how would a cooperative situation work for commercial property?
It's so easy. You can do something. So what we did, and what we did was we put together a framework in which there is a fund basically in which you could contribute
and it's
to
a
this
private fund.
It's a private fund, and more than this is the deal. It really has to be someone who is. That someone has to have sort of the majority of the decision making and the financial risk. Someone takes on that big risk, but what you have behind you is the sort of the infrastructure financially that says I have 100 people who have donated $1,000 each. I've got $100,000 of other people's money for lender. You know what I mean, for this thing. I'm gonna put in 500,000, but here's my 100,000. And as this continues to increase in value, we also then split those earnings divided by the percentage of ownership to the people. Now, it's very you can do it today, like with properties. My clients have properties in Michigan that they're buying. They just closed in Detroit, and got a consortium of 50 people to donate some things, and they did two in Baltimore, where people are like, wow, people are black people are buying real estate properties in Baltimore. These dilapidated, deteriorating retail centers that have been blighted for so long that people just gave up hope. Well, you have to peel it out of sometimes the owner's hands, because even though it's blighted and things like that, someone is, if Cellular One is has a lease there, they're paying some decent money to be there. Like, someone's buying it and making money. The only reason why people might sell it is because of the danger. Sometimes if there's shootings there, people don't feel that comfortable. But not so many people are selling things in neighborhoods where you are getting a great cash flow. But you can, if we decided we wanted to buy 87th and Cottage Grove, by the way. Let's say we had that, I don't believe we own that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm just saying those people have owned it for decades because we keep buying things there. No matter if someone gets shot there, whatever. But it's a decent, safe little area. So why are they going to give it up? They got national retailers there. They've got top line people there. They have someone clean it up if something happens. You got Garrett's is across the street and the Bank Seaway's across the street and all this. So it's a great neighborhood, right? But if they did want to sell, who is able to then move in? Can we come together, convince a lender that we have the 10 of us are going to come up with $25,000 each, and then someone is going to be on the hook though, because someone is going to be making sure the property management is well done, taxes are paid, all those different things. So, but it can happen. It can happen in many communities. So let's get back to sort of the maintenance of Chicago segregation. Let's talk about some of these communities that.
Yeah, as you're heading there, let's just what runs so much of what is happening within our communities, residential and commercial, lending, borrowing, etc., is nepotism and partiality.
Amen.
I mean that it ain't about qualifications. You understand? It ain't about degrees. You understand? If I'm your cousin, your brother, you understand? You understand a part of your fraternity, sorority. You understand? Yes, I'm
It's
going
the
to be
American
able to
way.
borrow the funds. If I should stumble and fall, I can go back still and get another $1 million to buy myself out.
Exactly. Like, if I was the president and my last name was Bush, my son could be the president. Or, we can go back in time and say, the Roosevelts, my cousin can be the president. I mean, these things are rampant in every community, but certainly in American society and our ecosystem here in America. You have to know somebody. Someone has to then move you forward. But if you're of African descent, it's sometimes very difficult
Yes, it is.
even if you do have those things, because sometimes we're still not working together the way we should be.
Those of us that are able to enjoy some of the things that you were just talking about, we have to fit the equation because the decision makers, if we don't fit, I don't care what you say, you're not going to get with all your qualifications, etc.
Absolutely.
So until we start to, back to your co-op, joint ventures, you understand, and all the other things, until we start to work together, we're spitting in the ocean.
Well, I think about three prominent examples of where we missed up. Number one, 80 was 87th and the Dan Ryan. At one time that whole retail area was owned by black people, and we let it get away. The same thing, we had a chance to buy. Black people had a chance to buy 85th and Cottage Grove, and they didn't come together. They did not cooperate together to buy it. Mr. Taylor of Taylor Wright Cleaners was leading the group to buy it, but they didn't come together to buy it. Now it's one of the most successful shopping areas in the city of Chicago. Am
It
I right?
is. It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's a
We do not
tragedy.
have the
Yeah.
funds. We cannot get the funds to have the opportunity
Well,
to
that's true.
fail or succeed. To fail
Right.
or succeed.
Okay.
No opportunity to do either.
You understand? We cannot go back.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, we're able to borrow just enough to get you in trouble, rather than enough to go through
Uh-huh.
the peaks and the valleys. But again, it's still back to us, because until we start, because we economically we spend a lot of money, don't we?
Oh,
So much money.
but you see,
Foolishly.
but see, segregation is supporting white commercial and white investors. I mean, look at those shopping centers that you talked about: 87th Cottage Road, 84th, 85th and Cottage Road, the Dan Ryan. I mean, look at they're making money. They don't live in those communities, but they're making money off of us, and they're maintaining segregation.
Nothing new.
But they're profiting from it.
Nothing new.
They're profiting from it. So talk to me a little bit about some of the communities today, if we can. I want to move to what you see in some of the communities. So let's start with what's happening in Bronzeville right now. Like, what do you? I mean, this is a place where you started. You came to Chicago, and it was what was happening there when you came there. It was deteriorating. You said it was on the decline. There were people moving out and people moving in from the Great Migration, and it was on the decline. Now it is very much on the radar of University of Chicago and their employees and their staff. It is definitely sort of top of mind for young professionals who want to move into the neighborhood of all nationalities. And it is sort of taking a turn. It is sort of doing unique things. They've knocked down the projects that were there. We've done some sort of infrastructure improvements, and other people have done different things. It's changing in a way where people are sort of a little concerned about gentrification.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
really interesting word as we're talking about communities. What are your thoughts about what's happening in these communities, and how do you see sort of the future of that community just
Well,
off the bat?
let's take one example, the Obama Center. One of my real estate friends told me a year ago. She said Woodlawn is one of the hottest real estate areas in the city of Chicago.
Of course.
Whites are coming in, buying houses at a low price, either tearing them down or renovating them, and the prices are going up. There are houses in Woodlawn that go for $1 million. Do you understand that?
That is correct. That is correct.
It blows your mind.
The 4 cycles to a neighborhood:
Okay. Okay.
Bronzeville, Woodlawn,
Mm-hmm.
and any other communities that we look at. Inglewood
Same thing.
have been the target for a number of years. So these things were being planned
Oh, okay.
long before
Okay.
now. You
Okay.
understand?
Okay.
Long
I got
before
you.
now.
I got you.
You understand?
I got you.
Again, buy low, sell high. And as we talk about appraising,
Mm-hmm.
those persons, when they first start buying within those communities and doing the gut rehabs, they were able to, number one, borrow the money
Gotcha.
or had the cash.
Gotcha.
And of course, the appraiser is instructed
Uh-huh.
to find only comparables that have been gut rehab. And if you go over a mile, that's okay.
Okay.
To find comparables to solidify that sales price of those properties. So these are things that have already been planned. It's just that we're not in the middle of the planning process.
And we don't have access to the loans and the investment.
We spend a lot of money.
I mean, we do. We just don't use it in the right way. So, I mean, you're right when you think about these communities, but some communities are sort of really interesting if you think about it. So let's talk about Austin.
Okay.
How is Austin changing? Is it still very much right across the street from Oak Park. You think
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm,
certain
mm-hmm.
things, might change in the communities. There's lots of new development planned for both North Avenue and Chicago
Right,
Avenue. There's
right.
so many things that are happening there. But what's happening with the demographic of that community? Are you familiar with what's happening and what's going on in Austin right now?
It's changing uh, rather rapidly. Loretta Hospital is still there. They've now put a soccer field over there, uh, but the commercial areas in Garfield Park, for instance, have not really changed that much. Why is that the case?
So I think, and that's the great thing that's happening right now. So if you go to the Department of Planning's website right now, you can see all of the things that Chicago Plan Commission, which is the group that is supposed to green light all of the new development, talk to developers, look at the financial concerns, see if there's some, municipal gifts or grants or things that could be given to make projects work. You'll see a lot of new development in and around Garfield Park.
Okay, okay,
Madison Street is like full of new projects,
okay,
tons of new projects. I mean, you can't go to a corner and not see a new project from Western, all the way to
okay,
Austin. By the way,
okay,
so but you have to think like then you have to say, are these projects really going to happen? Are they really going to occur? Because a lot of things you'll see they got money from the city was supposed to give them $250,000, but it's you have to already have the money to use
okay.
their money. You know what I
I
mean?
got you.
So
I
you have
got you.
to build it and get it done first, and then they might reimburse you. Well, they do reimburse you. There are some success stories to that, but there's only so many people who already have the funds in place
Mhm.
to then get the deal done and then ask for the city to reimburse. Sort of, it's not like I gave you the money and then you can get it done. There's tons of new development that's happening all over both North Lawndale. I mean, East Lake
Mhm.
just opened up something on Ogden. Lawndale, Development Corporation has a ton of new
Mhm.
real estate projects, two flats, single family homes, the manufactured housing that's going up very quickly at rates and using financial tools that will help low income people buy these properties. There's a lot of things going on that people don't know about.
Now, are these primarily black investors or black owners in
That's
these
the
areas?
yeah. So right now, in most of those,
Bakito,
yes, yeah.
Bakito,
The whole thing is
Smart
like
Lip.
sometimes there are like
Yeah.
again East Lake Development is an African American owned firm.
Okay.
They do have partners and collaborators
Okay.
that may not be of African descent. Um, Lawndale Christian, there was a Lawndale Community Development Corporation,
Yes, I know
tight
about that.
organization, and it's people who look like you who are getting these things done
Hmm.
and looking to use every tool available to build in those vacant lots that are in and around there.
And
And
what about the commercial development in these
And so,
areas?
but the commercial development, as I see it, no one's focused on. You know what I mean? Like the
Okay.
focus is not there completely, but things are happening. I mean, things are happening, but it's not a complete circle. The people who own those properties for 1,000 years, either they're vacant and blighted, and so people are trying to do some things. In North Lawndale, you have the Staines Foundation. Staines Foundation is doing a lot of work in North Lawndale, so they are buying properties. I did a market study for them where they wanted to know the ownership of every vacant and blighted commercial property in the corridor, and they started buying some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening with them is becomes like, what's the next step? Like what are you going to do? What's the plan after that? But I'm just so think about some of these communities, and that's why this show is so important because we want to make sure that people know you can see all the things that these communities are supposed to be getting money for. Like people have created funds to fund these things, but people don't even know that's happening. So you don't
Hmm.
even know what's going on in your own community, and you sort of try to figure that out. South Shore, what do you think about sort of South Shore right now? South Shore, you're on the lakefront. You've got unbelievable, beautiful homes in these
Hmm.
communities.
Hmm.
I mean, some things like you think would that neighborhood, it didn't always look like us, right? 1919, it didn't look like us, right? That's why people got killed, right? You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, now it looks just like us. It's our culture, and things are happening. There's a lot of great things happening in these communities, but sometimes it is still are we still segregating ourselves? in certain instances? Are we looking to, go to other communities and see what they may have? Are we moving to Humboldt Park, like some people are? Are we moving to Pilsen like some people are? Some of these communities are completely changing because other people want to come in, but it may not be us. How are we, impacting our own sort of segregation moments?
Well, I can tell you what's happening in South Shore. Uh, South Shore, as you stated, primarily from the mid 60s up to probably now, was primarily African American. But now, again, many real estate investors are buying up dilapidated properties and redeveloping them and selling them at a really staggering price. And one of the reasons is, of course, the adjacency of the Obama Center, which is going to have an effect on it. The proposed golf center that they're going to put in that area. The fact that, as you stated, close to the lake. And so it's a desirable community to be in. So people are really looking at that and wanting to buy into that. But again, I'm, I'm really upset about the commercial end of it. While we may still be there, we don't own any of the commercial property. Remember 71st and that little area around 71st and was it right by the railroad track, right?
Stony Island, Cottage Grove,
No,
or
yeah,
you're talking about
east,
further.
further east.
So, Jeffrey.
Yep,
Okay.
that could have been owned by some African Americans. His friend, who was in the NAACP, led a group that tried to buy that area, and they didn't buy it. What happened? Do you know?
Well, there is a person of African descent that does own that former bank building, the Urban Partnership Bank building.
Oh yeah,
They
that's
still own that.
Mrs. Starks.
Right, and then of course you're right. The big center could have been
Mm-hmm.
purchased, or they could have exchanged hands,
Mm-hmm.
but some things happen that way. But what I want you to realize, so there are some community groups that are doing great things
Oh, good.
in South Shore. The South Shore Chamber of Commerce,
Right.
young lady who is the head of that, are really making some moves.
Carol Adams, Dr. Carol Adams, is a part of that group.
Is she? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. Tanya Trice is the executive director of that.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you, this is the interesting thing that people don't think about all the time. I've been made aware and helped a couple of young people of, not young, I would say middle-aged people of African descent own a lot of those small sort of 5,000 square foot buildings. Like if you think about 71st Street
Mm-hmm.
between
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey and Stony, it's a bunch of little buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a bunch of buildings. You got your buddy Center, who was right there. What's that? On 71st Street. Why am I not thinking? Boofy. Yeah. So
right.
think about all those little
Yeah,
buildings that are
yeah,
right there. There's so many, and there's so many.
commercial buildings.
I mean,
right?
that's the great way to get started too. Like buy some little buildings.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the work that has to be done on the inside of them because of the deterioration over the years is amazing. But I met two young black ladies who own some of these properties. I put a tenant in one of them for her. There's another woman across the street. She got her own tenant, but then needs to build out another 5,000 square feet because it's empty and the beautiful barrel roof is coming down and things like that. So little things are happening, and again, that's how you can make it happen. If you say, look, if you think about the area between Jeffrey and Stony Island, there's a finite number of properties to purchase. There's a finite number of empty lots in which to develop.
Right.
If you can find, if community groups come together and say, look, we're going to focus on this area, who can we find that you feel like will appreciate the neighborhood, will add some value to the neighborhood? And that is happening in some communities. The Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation, they've built a whole lot of great things in Auburn Gresham. They're renovating, they're doing different things. They have, built like some tremendous sort of, and I think right now, unfortunately, I think a lot of people think the way to sort of contribute everything is sort of low income housing, that sort of low income housing thing where you got some retail on the first floor and sort of some mixed income housing on the top floor. You'll see a lot of that because there's funds available to build those. So a lot of developers are sort of moving in that direction because it's easy to make impact on corridors. So you see one on 63rd and right off of Halsted. Again, the one that I mentioned to you on Ogden and North Lawndale. Trinity United Church of Christ just did one that's right on 91st or 95th in Cottage Grove. So you'll see a lot more of that, and there's lots more planned. However, you wonder, like, is that the best? Is that the highest and best use? But at least something's happening with these properties. Like somebody's looking to invest something in these neighborhoods. And, so people are doing some things, but do we know about them? And how are we supporting them?
True.
And that's the thing. It's like, and again, are we still like, are we going to invest in our old former communities, or are we all going to leave and, do some other things? So it's like, it becomes, how are we contributing to our own communities, and how are we making our neighbors and our friends with some cash or with new ideas or with some, or being innovative? How are we telling them, hey, this is happening over here? Why don't you think about this? What do you think right now are sort of the hot communities in Chicago? Like, where do people want to live in Chicago now that you're familiar with? I mean, you would know probably more than
Absolutely.
Dr. Stars.
Well, you just talked about all the various developments on the west side, south side, south shore, etc. It's going to be up to us, ladies and gentlemen, as to what is going to be a hot community. And we must understand that there are folks that are bringing dollars in, and many of us are still standing out in front of faith. But we're not able to get the millions and the billions of dollars necessary. You understand? So as we call somebody's name, questions got to be: have we looked at the corporate entity as to who is actually running whatever it is? But I just think about, as you were talking, pre-World War II, the cities were pretty much, these northern cities were pretty much occupied by a certain racial ethnic group. But during World War II, before World War II, when we started moving from the south to the north, the urban community was turned over, with the exception of certain pockets where our brothers and sisters maintained for their purposes. But they were building, when the soldiers were coming back from World War II.
Right. In the
They were
suburbs.
building around,
Right.
whether it's in Chicago, whether it's in Detroit,
Baltimore, wherever.
Yeah.
That's why they call it the inner city.
and but again, I say back to what I was saying: until we really start to support each other. I mean, some of us are succeeding in a small scale, but we look at the big picture economically, wealth. Our people are still small players.
Right.
You understand? But individual with a group around us. But until it, let me just talk about, and I think you mentioned earlier, Asians, Latinos. I can recall when there maybe only been one identifiable Puerto Rican brother selling on the south side.
Right.
Now you drive down Pulaski Road, it is.
Yes,
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Identify maybe one Filipino or Chinese. You understand? Now they've got an organization that is larger than our Realtors, our Black Association that was formed in 1941. You understand? It's because we're not, we're taking from each other. That's just fact. We're taking, not building, we're taking from each other. I may be out of school here, somebody may listen, but that's just fact. Our organizations are not performing
Together. Together, they're not together. Absolutely.
Because we can pressure, we can push these institutions, but we've got to do it together.
Wow. Frank, that's, I mean, that's a mic drop right there. That's what we have to sort of think about. We have to do more things together. And if you think about it socially, we've been programmed, we've been socialized to compete, right? We didn't come here at our own will. Now we're fighting just to stay alive. So that kind of thing. Other people come here because they think it's
land of opportunity.
It's the land of opportunity. They're working together. We want to be in this neighborhood, but that's very much like every other nationality that came here. That's why you have Little Italy. That's why you have Ukrainian Village. That's why you have these things, right? Everyone sequestered themselves here, in these things. But they all knew they had a purpose. They all knew that they wanted to come here and do something different. We came here with a very different, unfortunate point of view, and again, socialized from the very beginning to today to compete, not to completely support. And then as soon as, again, the gaze says, oh, you can come here now, right? Then we go right there and we abandon each other. And we want this person to support us. We think that only the money is there, and then we forget about everybody else. So we have our own sort of work to do to internally and to improve our communities. So much work has to be done. Unfortunately, we are at the end of this hour, so we're going to wrap it up. But I want to wrap it up, Dr. Starks, with a comment from you. Anything that we should talk about, sort of just at the end, as we talk about sort of the maintenance of Chicago segregation and what you see the future as?
Well, I think the future is going to be a demand on the part of our young people, hopefully, to work together, because otherwise we are going down, down, down. We definitely have to begin to work together. And I'm always impressed by Frank's notion of the maintenance of integration. The fact that white people said, oh, we'll let a few blacks in, but we can't let too many in because
we've got to control it.
You got to control it.
And we don't think about that anymore. Frank comes to town and they're trying to say, yes, we're happy to support you in maintaining a finite number of people like you to come in, and that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
And Frank, you did that. That was a part of your testimony before the U.S. Congress. That was in what year was that?
I don't remember the year. She know more about me.
Right. As a matter of fact, that is so funny because we do have the picture of that here, which I told you to remind me of some of the things that we have here about your life.
Fascinating.
Here's him testifying right now. In this arena, and this is you again attempting to do so many things, from fair housing to the stoppage of maintenance of integration maintenance. Frank, your last statements.
Let's work together. Let's do the best we can. Start putting pieces together. Start working together.
Excellent.
I mean, we can win. Only teams win.
You got
individual stars will not win.
You got
the series. We've got to start. I ain't got to love you, but I got to respect you and your position, and you play your position, I play mine, and we come together and do as best we can to build on it. I hope the good Lord give me enough time to see this start to happen. I know it won't complete itself, but to start to happen.
And I think it will. And we'll just try to make you more aware of some of the things that where people are starting, who do have innovative ideas, who want to do great things. But you drop the mic on teams win. We have to operate as a team. This has been a wonderful discussion with two pioneers of Chicago real estate and Chicago urban studies history. And we are just so pleased that you all are here at the Real Estate for the Culture podcast, which is at WNUR 89.3 FM in Evanston and Chicago, and in HD1. In 2 weeks, come check us out again. You can see us on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. We are looking forward to talking more about what's happening in Chicago, in our neighborhoods, how we see the future, what we can do to change it. Thanks. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks for listening and sharing the Real Estate for the Culture podcast. Check out fpcommercial.net for all of our channels. See you next time.